So 2022 was a tale of two halves. The first half of the year was crazy, gangbusters, wild market, super busy, about as busy as I've ever seen it before. But what happened is we saw mortgage rates skyrocket. We started the year out with rates right around 3%. We ended up peaking out at rates over 7% in the second half of the year. So as rates increase, right, all markets, whether it be real estate, stocks, Walmart, doesn't make a difference. Everything is a function of supply and demand when it comes to any market. Well, what happens when you have mortgage rates rising is you have demand falling. And when demand falls, prices tend to fall. So what we saw happen is we saw buyers in the first half of the year, rates were rising and buyers were okay to a certain point. And then once the scales kind of tipped, which we saw happen around May, June kind of timeframe, we saw rates just get past a certain point where buyers just said, screw this, these rates are too high, I'm out of the game. And then the rates just continued to go up and up and up. The more the rates went up and up and up, the less the buyers came to the game. And we started to see values actually fall here in San Diego for the first time in a long time. I want to start by just clearing up a misconception. One of the things I hear people talk about, and hey, even when I got started buying real estate, I always heard the news talk about the Fed, and the Fed is raising rates, lowering rates, and all of that. Well, the misconception is that they actually have control over mortgage rates, and the reality of it is they don't. The Fed is typically reacting to what's more important, which has actually kind of made its debut in the last year or so, which is inflation. Inflation happens first. The Fed reacts to inflation, and then mortgage rates react to that. So the leading indicator, the thing that tends to start this whole trend, is what's happening with inflation. As you see inflation go up, the Fed says, oh no, inflation's out of control. We need to get inflation under control. The Fed raises their rates to try to lower what's happening with inflation. So when we saw inflation, which you'll see peaked out this year, or sorry, not this year, last year, we saw inflation peak out at over 9%, 9.1%. Just insane how high inflation got. Everything got out of control, whether you were trying to buy a car, RV, you were just trying to put fuel in your vehicle, boats, all kinds of stuff. Like the price on just everything shot through the roof. It got completely out of control. The Fed said, oh crap, we need to do something about this. And then they started to raise rates to try to get that inflation under control. In a perfect world, they want to see inflation in the 2 to 3% range. So when you're at 9%, that's way higher than they want things to be. So the Fed has done a lot of rate raises over the last year, but that is all reactionary. They are reacting to what's happening with inflation. So when we're focusing on where do we see things head, and we really focus heavily on this inflation chart. And so what you'll see is the inflation shot up the first half of the year. As a result, mortgage rates started to shoot up with that. CPI leads, mortgage rates follow. So as the rates started to shoot up, that freaked a lot of people out. A lot of people got out of the game. But as the Fed raised their rates, that started to get inflation back under control a little bit more. And we started to see rates come down toward the end of the year, where rates even, tiptoed around that 6%, at least on a 30-year fixed rate. And we'll talk about that. There's a 30-year fixed rate, which is your conventional, traditional loan. And then there's your FHA and VA loans, which actually tend to have lower rates. So not only do they have lower down payments, a VA loan, you're coming in with $0 down. With an FHA loan, you're coming in with 3.5% down. Those not only have lower down payments, but they also have lower rates as well. So we'll talk a lot about the 30-year fixed rate. Just understand when that's kind of the benchmark we always use. Just understand that FHA rates, VA rates, they're all going to be a little bit lower than what we're talking about when we talk about a 30-year fixed rate loan. So here's what happened with values. The first half of the year, everything was amazing. Prices shot up like crazy. I mean, there was this time a year ago, we were talking about properties with 20, 30, 40 offers. We had buyers writing offers on properties they'd never seen before. Buyers were writing offers with zero contingencies on homes they'd never seen, and they were agreeing to pay $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 above whatever the property appraised for. They basically said, I don't care what the appraisal comes in at. I'm buying this house. Come hell or high water, that's my house. I'm buying it. I don't care about the appraisal. It got pretty wild. So as you can see, values shot up like crazy. Well, we finally had this correction. Values have been going up for a long time. When COVID first hit, there was a tiny little dip because who knew what was going to happen with COVID? All of a sudden, everybody realized I don't like my house. I want more space. I want to be in a different area. I want access to outdoor activities. Markets started to pick up, and we basically peaked out around April. So April, May was kind of the peak back in 2022, but that's got to a point buyers said, okay, these rates are way too high. I'm out of the game. And buyers disappeared and the values came down. In fact, values came down, depending on the neighborhood in San Diego, 10 to 15%. So we've actually seen a decline from April to the end of the year to December. We saw a 10 to 15% decline depending on the market that you're in. So kind of crazy to see that much of a change in that short of a period of time. Now, when you look at a year over year chart, you look at where we were, in January and where we finished in December, we're actually finished pretty level. I think we only saw like a little over 1% change year over year. But if we actually look at the chart, you can see we went up 10 or 15%, we came down 10 or 15%. So wild year. Years like this do not happen very often in real estate. And I've done this for 20 years. I haven't seen many years like this ever. So kind of crazy to see this much volatility, but that's kind of where we've been in 2022.